Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about pocket doors, and we'd like to thank Glitter Queen for giving us a 5-star rating and review for our book 4 on Amazon. And we have our ebooks now for only $1. So check out Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, book 4 on Amazon, and you can download it to any smart device. And if you're reading the book, check out the link to Create a Bed.
Why?
It's a space-saving concept like pocket doors.
What do you mean?
So you can. They have hardware where you can create your own Murphy bed.
Oh, okay.
So it disappears into the wall just like pocket doors. The first pocket doors in the early 1800s ran on a track on the floor, and then in the 1880s, top-hung rollers were introduced, and these became much more popular. And I couldn't find much history or famous pocket doors.
Why not?
But
Nothing by Pliny the Elder, ancient Egypt.
Right. But I did find a couple famous doors. So if you're in London, you can check out the Sherlock Holmes Museum at 221B Baker Street. And this has a Victorian 6-panel door with a half-circle glass transom above it, silver knocker, and a mail slot.
That's what you're going to go with as a famous door?
And if you're still in England, you can go to 10 Downing Street. It's the home and office of the Prime Minister. And this is another 6-panel door.
I could pick like 10 other places in England that would be more famous than these two doors.
You know what's interesting about 10 Downing Street? It was
Yes.
originally made out of oak, the door, but after a mortar attack, it's now made out of blast-proof steel.
It's good.
You know, if you're in England, you actually can't go down Downing Street.
Oh,
So,
that's too bad.
but some great pictures online.
So I started book 5.
Fantastic.
Yeah, one of us is working hard. So I started...
Is your name going to be first on this one, too?
Yes, from now on. No, yeah, it's too bad. So I was looking up fire prevention stuff, and so the Great Chicago Fire,
Right.
You know, Catherine O'Leary's cow,
Right.
at that address.
Okay.
They now have the Chicago Fire Academy.
That's funny, isn't it? You know, I have another famous door. So the Palmer House Hotel was built in 1871, and 13 days later, it burned in the Chicago Fire.
I was going to say.
Bummer, huh? So they rebuilt it in brick and iron, and they advertised it at the time as the world's only fireproof hotel in 1873. And it was actually the first hotel to have Edison light bulbs, an elevator, and a telephone. I think we've talked about it before.
Yeah, wow.
And the bronze peacock doors that they still have on the building are about 150 years old. It goes back to the original time that this building was built. So pretty interesting.
Exciting.
These you can see if you're in Chicago.
I hope so. Be a bad hotel if you can't go in. Are we actually going to talk about pocket doors?
So, pocket doors are a nice option for rooms that don't have the space for a standard hinge door to swing, and they give a nice clean look to rooms where you don't close the door very often, and you really don't want that open door sitting against the wall covering up the space if you have furniture there or you want wall decorations. They're going to be the easiest to install when you're planning to build a partition wall and close in an area. So if you're building a closet or putting rooms into an attic or a basement.
Right.
Some pros are recommending adding pocket doors to homes that you're making safer for elderly family members who need the use of a walker or someone who's using a wheelchair.
Why?
Well, it's going to be easier to open and close than a standard hinge door. And you can get ADA handles on these too, so it's much easier to open. They can also add privacy between like a kitchen and a dining room or kitchen and living room, or if you have an open floor plan, you can get converging pocket doors, so you can have 2 doors, one on each side of the opening, or bypass pocket doors. You can have 3 or 4 doors and create a very wide opening that can be closed just when you want privacy or you want to control noise, like during a party. You can't easily replace all existing doors with a pocket door. You may have electric, gas, or vents in the wall where that door would slide in that pocket. So you need the width of the door behind the wall. And you can't just take out the studs in any wall and put in a pocket door. So if your wall is load-bearing, you're going to have to support this wall and use the correct size header above this.
Why is it called a pocket door?
You're creating a pocket in the wall for it to slide into. So whenever you open up a section of a load-bearing wall for a door or a window and you're cutting out the studs, you need to have this thick piece of wood called a header above the opening, and this is carrying the weight of the house above it. It's transferring it to the studs on the side of the opening and down to the foundation.
Interesting.
If you want a pocket door in an existing wall, make sure you check with a structural engineer if you have any doubts whether the wall is load-bearing.
Where do you find one of those?
Yellow Pages. And this is best for a pro to do that kind of project because you have to size the header correctly, and it takes technical knowledge of the home structure and the weight. Mm-hmm. So not all homes are going to have interior load-bearing walls. Some homes with roof trusses won't. But in general, you want to consider all the outside walls to be load-bearing. Interior load-bearing walls will always be perpendicular to the ceiling joists, but not all perpendicular walls are going to be load-bearing.
Okay, that's not confusing.
They could be partition walls, but you always want to assume they're load-bearing if you're unsure.
Okay.
And if you've gone ahead and removed the drywall, a load-bearing wall is going to have a top plate with double 2x4s or 2x6s. When you're looking for pocket door hardware, there are kits that are completely broken down and pre-assembled kits where the frame is connected to the header. So I went to a couple of the local home centers here in the Chicago area, and at Lowe's they only had the kits from National Hardware. So in this long, skinny box, you get a wood header with the aluminum track connected inside of it. You get split jams, and these are nailing strips that are wrapped in metal. And what's nice about this is that metal stops the nails from going through, or the screws from going through to the door, and it also stiffens the unit. And these are used on each side of the header down to the floor at the beginning of the pocket, and then 2 for each side halfway into the pocket. You get end brackets, floor brackets, door hardware with the rollers, so you get everything in this one box.
So where's this going to be located, like in the store?
So at Lowe's, it was in hardware. And then at Home Depot, it was in Millworks by the doors. So they had pre-assembled kits. The header is attached to 4 split studs and to the floor brackets. So you have this very large box to get back to the house, which is much easier to install, but harder to transport.
Unless you get it delivered.
Before you buy a kit, you need to know if you have 2x4 or 2x6 walls, the door height, the door width, the door thickness, and the weight of the door. So at my local store, there were just 2 types, but I spoke with the salesperson, and they had a lot of choices online, and he said that they ship them for no charge.
Okay.
So the key thing is knowing what your door is. You know, is it 30 by 80, 36 by 80? How heavy is it? And then when I looked at some of the kits they had, so these were for 2x4 walls. It accepted doors up to 125 pounds, 1 to 1 3/4 inches thick. Another kit, 150 pound limit, 1 to 1 3/8. 200 pound limit, 1 to 1 3/4 inches thick. And another one went up to 400 pounds, 1 1/8 to 1 3/4. So the key is you're picking your door first, and then you're matching it to the type of hardware that you have.
So is there a special type of door?
Primarily you're picking a slab door, so you're picking anything. So this is where you can really be creative, match your decor, you can get something very decorative.
So there's nothing that says pocket door?
No, there's no pocket door.
Are you making fun of me? Because I think that's a real question.
Yeah, you're just using a regular door.
Okay, well, I mean, how would I know that?
You should listen to the Fix It Home Improvement Channel podcast. A few pros recommend using a solid core door rather than hollow core. So the weight is going to keep the door more stable. It's going to slide easier and not wobble when pulled shut. And it's going to provide a solid top area to screw your rollers into.
What else should you be thinking about when looking for a door for your pocket door?
So you're primarily looking for a slab door without notches for hinges or holes for doorknobs. But think about what type of latches or pulls you're going to be using. There's a couple of new locks that actually fit into the pre-drilled hole for a standard doorknob.
Okay.
So if you have that, it'd be nice to have that hole already drilled for you. But you can use almost any style door. Flush, paneled, rustic, knotty pine, glass panels, or frosted panels. And this is really nice because you can allow a lot of light into an area, especially if you're building a partition wall. You could have transom windows above this and then create this nice opening. And then if you close this with either translucent glass or just glass panels, you could really get a dramatic look, and it's going to knock down the sound or create some privacy.
Nice.
If you're starting a project and working on an existing non-load-bearing wall, you're going to remove the drywall to the stud a little over the width of the door you're going to be using, and then just confirm you don't have any gas, electric, or vent to work around. And we're going to make a rough opening the size for this pocket door kit. So we need to check the manual. So here's a couple rough opening dimensions I saw on a couple manuals I read. One is your door height plus 4.5 inches, the door width times 2 plus 1 inch. So for an existing wall, you're going to be using a reciprocating saw. You're going to cut out the studs, open up the space needed to create this rough opening. If you're building a non-load-bearing wall to house your pocket doors, you're going to take a 2x4 or a 2x6. Let's say we're using 2x4s.
Why would you use a 2x6?
If you want your wall wider, if you're using a heavier door, or if you maybe want to put insulation between there, if you're creating like a video room or a music room.
Okay.
So our top plate is going to be our 2x4. Let's say we're using all the way across the top. We're going to screw it into the ceiling. And directly below it, we're going to have a bottom plate on both sides of that rough opening. So we're going to go up to the rough opening with the 2x4s. And now we're going to take studs, vertical studs, and we're going to put those every 16 inches.
So 2x4s?
2x4s up to the rough opening. And in that rough opening, you have king studs. So these are vertical studs from the top plate to the bottom plate. And your header is going to be tight between them at whatever the recommended height is. And then next to the king stud and tucked under the header on each side of the opening is a jack stud. So this goes from the bottom of the header to the bottom plate, and that's going to help support the header. And
so what's the header?
So the header is that piece of horizontal wood just in the rough opening, that's the top piece of wood.
Okay.
And then there's going to be generally cripples, so small vertical pieces, and then above that you're going to have your top plate.
So we're still using 2x4s here?
Yes, so we're still using 2x4s. And if you have a rough opening up to 8 feet wide, you can just use a single 2x4 or a 2x6 as the header. If it's wider than 8 feet, then check your local codes, because you may need to have something thicker. And if you plan on getting a kit where you're screwing directly to the header, make sure you check how thick they want that header. But most of these kits aren't going to the header. They're actually going to be supported by the jack studs, the vertical studs on the sides, and that's going to be carrying the weight.
Yeah.
For the pocket door to work well, you need to make sure that that opening is plumb, and then if you're using the header, make sure that that's level. The header and the track are usually going to be cut to a few different sizes, depending on the kit. So you're going to trim the wood nailer side with a hand saw, and then the metal track with a hacksaw, and match your opening size. And then determine the height. You're going to screw in these brackets and make sure you level it. With the kits that are broken down, you're going to connect your split studs to the header and the floor brackets and make sure that they're plumb.
Okay,
and I would pre-drill before.
Time out.
So don't split anything.
What is a split stud?
So your split studs, rather than the studs that you put for the rest of your wall, which are 2x4s, let's say, they're going to be 3.5 inches wide. These are only going to be about 1/2 inch wide. It's basically a metal channel with a piece of wood inside it, about 1/2 inch thick, so that you can screw your drywall to it.
Okay,
and it's
so
going
this
to
is
be
coming
rigid.
in the kit?
Yes, this will be in your kit. And some are just wood split studs, so you have to be careful with those. What's nice about the metal wrapped studs, you can't screw through it easily.
Right.
So you're not actually going to, accidentally.
Hit the door.
Right, exactly. So be careful if you're using a kit where it's just wood without the metal.
Okay, what about plumb? What does that mean?
So straight up and down. So it's kind of the vertical level.
So how do you test that?
With a level? For the floor brackets, if you have a wood floor, you're just going to screw them right into the wood. If you have a concrete slab, you can either use screws or adhesives. Tapcons are concrete screws, so it's TAPCON. You drill a pilot hole, and then these are self-tapping right into the concrete, and they work really well. I've used them on a lot of projects. A couple of top-rated construction adhesives, the heavy-duty liquid nails, and the Red Devil construction adhesive, both good for concrete. JB Weld has something called Quick Weld, so it's KWIK, and this is a 2-part epoxy that comes in a syringe, and it connects metal to concrete.
Yeah.
Then to attach your door, you're going to take these hanger plates, screw them into the top of the door, and you're going to put these roller hangers into the track in the header. You can either have 2 wheels, 3 or 4 wheels. If you have the rollers with the 3 wheels, you want to alternate the wheel placement so it balances it better. Once you slide your door up to this, it's going to clip in place, and then you have a tool that you're going to be able to adjust the door so it's perfectly level and plumb. And then you're going to have a couple of door guides on the bottom of the opening. You'll put up your drywall and then put trim around everything.
Nice.
To open and close your door, you're going to have a pull on the edge of the door with a flush mount, and it's usually going to have a pivoting finger pull. It flips up. You can grab the door and start pulling it out of the pocket, and then you're going to finish closing the door with a side pull. And it can be square or round or rectangular or oval shape. Mm-hmm. And for heavy doors, you want the pulls on the side to be large enough that it's comfortable to open the door. And longer pulls are going to be easier for your fingers to get into so you can get a better grip.
Right. It's not just one finger.
Yeah, right. Some pulls aren't going to be flush to the door, so you need to know how much space there is for the hardware going into the pocket. You can add a latch or a lock to a pocket door, and Johnson Hardware has an interesting locking system. So this can be used in a door that has a pre-bored hole for a lock. So rather than using a traditional entrance lock...
Because you can.
You connect this, and in that hole, this is where your finger pull would be. There's a latch that sticks out the edge of the door that closes onto a metal rod and a strike plate on the door jamb.
Okay.
And then inside, you can press a button inside that pull to lock it and unlock it.
So on the pull?
Yeah, on the center pull. So like where the doorknob would normally be, that you're using that as a pull, and it also has a locking button and an unlocking button.
Okay.
So really easy to install, and if you bought a slab door without a hole, you can use the same kit that you would use to create the hole for a door lock. So you're just going to bore a 2 1/8 inch hole and then a 1 inch hole on the edge. And they have locks for 1 3/8 setback and 1 3/4 setback. And when you're shopping the different latches and locks, I would see what the installation process is. Some are going to require a chisel or a router to create a space for the pull or a hole in the edge of the door. Some are a mortise style, so you've got to create this deep pocket in the edge of the door, and if you don't have the proper tools, it can be very difficult.
Really? One
tip for a mortise style latch is you can mark the area to be removed and get a paddle bit the width of that opening.
On the door?
On the edge of the door. I would take a piece of tape, the depth that I want that opening, so that I know where to stop as I'm drilling this hole.
So what are you doing with the tape?
So I'm putting a piece of tape on the shaft of the paddle bit, and I'm going to measure it so how deep I want that opening.
Okay.
And now in that area that I've marked out, I'm going to drill a series of holes with the paddle bit, open that up, and then I'll just use a chisel to square it off. And you can usually get a very clean opening like that. Some top-rated pocket door kits. Johnson Hardware, it's JOHNSON. Cox USA, it's COX. Hafele, so it's HAFELE America, and they have some heavy-duty kits. Hager, HAGER, and Everbuilt.
Do you have anything else to add?
When you're picking your pocket door hardware, you need to know whether you have a 2x4 or a 2x6 wall, the door height, the door width, the thickness, and the weight. And then know the makeup of it. Is it going to support the hangers screwed into the top of the door? I would also take my time and look at the pulls and the locks ahead of time, because your local hardware store or your lumberyard may not have something that you really like.
Right.
And then that's something you're going to have to be ordering online. For a dramatic opening, think about using 2 to 4 doors, because you could really create a nice space and get cool looking doors.
Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, the Spotify mobile app, the Google Play Music app, iHeartRadio, and CastBox.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can download our books, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, on Amazon.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter @FixItPodcast.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.